everyone this morning? Today we're going to talk about living humbly. What does that mean to you? Say, being content, okay.
Not thinking more of yourself than.
Not thinking more of yourself than you should, definitely.
I think that's when you realize he's in control. You're there to serve willingly and wanting, and just surrender yourself. You humble yourself before him, or we place ourselves before him to do what he desires us to do.
Right, so you
Take self out of the picture.
correct. So you put yourself in the correct place, which is, submitting yourself to God, doing what he asked you to do. That's definitely a good one. Anyone else? And Hunter, turn that down a little bit, please. Anyone else? All right, someone turns to Proverbs chapter 3. Let's read 32 through 35. Proverbs 3, 32 through 35.
For the forward is an abomination to the Lord, but his secret is with the righteous. The curse of the Lord is in the house of the wicked, but he blesses the habitation of the just. Surely he scorns the scorner, but he gives grace to the lowly. The wise shall inherit glory, but the shame shall be the promotion of fools.
So in verse 34 in the NIV, it says, he mocks proud mockers, but shows favor to the humble and the oppressed. So y'all ever heard of different, folklore and stories, I'm sure, when you were growing up and in school? Well, this one here is a Mongolian folklore that tells a familiar fable of the boastful frog. Two geese were about to start southward on their annual autumn migration when they were asked by a frog to take him with them. When the geese expressed their willingness to do so, that they could figure out a way to carry the frog grabbed a long stalk of grass and got the two geese to take it by each end. And while he clung to it in the middle with his mouth, in this manner, the three were making their journey when they noticed from below by some men. The men loudly expressed their admiration for the device and wondered who had been clever enough to come up with it. The proud frog opened his mouth to say, "It was I," lost his hold and fell to the earth and was killed. The moral of the story: when you have a good thing going, keep your mouth shut. So I read that and I was laughing. That's a good one. When you got a good thing going, keep your mouth shut. In the study of living that matters, we must study the virtue of humility. If there is a subject in the Bible that should stand out, it is the subject of pride. God warned the Israelites of their pride. Jesus condemned the Pharisees for their pride on numerous occasions. Paul warned Timothy not to appoint prideful elders, and the Apostle John ranked pride with the lust of the flesh. It does not take a Mongolian folklore to remind us that pride is destructive. The Word of God is full of warnings. And I know that, if you've been here long, you've heard Joe talk about pride, and there's not a place in the Bible that it's mentioned that what is it? Say,
Not mentioned in a positive.
it's not mentioned in the positive light, and as it says in Proverbs, it comes before a fall. And so we've got to just go back to the frog. What happened to him? He wanted to let everybody know he invented that. So someone turns to Proverbs 13, verse 10.
Our pride comes nothing but strife, but with well advised is wisdom.
Right. So pride comes with strife, okay? And someone reads Proverbs 14:3.
The mouth of the foolish is a bond intact, but the lips of the wise will protect them.
All right. And then Proverbs 16:18, which we just discussed.
Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall.
Mhm. And then Proverbs 29 and 23.
A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit.
So when we see all these verses, why do some of us still, I guess, show pride, or why are we prideful?
We try to make ourselves feel better about our self-esteem.
Okay, that's a very good one. Try to make ourselves feel better than the others. You know, I'm better than you. That's a good one. Yes, ma'am, Margaret.
Sometimes I think the devil is just working on us.
He is. I mean, because it's been compared to lust of the flesh. It's something that we as human beings want to be thought of as someone important or someone that everyone likes, right?
Say the devil made me do it. Well, he didn't really make me do it, but
He was tempted. You fell for it. Yeah, definitely. Anyone else? So why do we get stuck in some of our prideful ways?
I think we get to the point where you get used to acting a certain way until that just becomes our natural way of being.
Right.
And you act overconfident all the time, and that will
One day, yeah.
become your way too.
Yeah, definitely. And if we go back and look at what Christ did, Christ, anybody was one that should have, I mean, look who he was. He was God's only son that he sent here to this earth to die for us. And he was without sin. But what did he do with the people that was around him when time came for different things to happen? Was he the one that put himself up front? Or did he stoop to be what? Wash their feet. So Christ, even though he deserved the position, he still went to show others that he was their servant. And that's what we need to make sure that we do.
I also think it has to do with, we don't like looking wrong in front of people or admitting we're wrong.
There's another good one, okay?
And then, so we'd rather, we're how people perceive us. We get caught up in wanting them, if I admit I'm wrong, they're not gonna look favorably upon me.
Right. And I think we're going to talk about this a little bit further. It's a good subject you brought up, but a lot of times do we think that God's going to go with what we think instead of us going with what God thinks? So that's a good point, Tina. And not only can we do it with men, but we can do it with God, Steve.
I think we want everybody to see the good things we do
Yes.
so that nobody notices the things that are not so good.
Right.
And, you see this over here, don't look over here.
Right. So we're doing this to distract, maybe, yeah. And that's true too. That's true too. When we read the word pride in Proverbs, it is translated from the Hebrew word gallon. This word is used in the Old Testament several times, and it often refers to the majesty of God. So pride is referred to as the majesty of God. Isaiah uses it on several occasions in reference to God and the splendor of his majesty. Splendor of telling people how good we are is what the definition of pride is. And that's something that we shouldn't do. I realize that none of us would ever come right out and say that, but our actions might very well show that. So we've got to be very careful how we act. Another word for pride is elitism. We might not necessarily be prideful of ourselves, but we may be arrogant in the way we express what we believe, or self-promoting with the gifts God has given us. It is important that we remember that any gift we have is from God, and we must not think highly of ourselves because the gift came from Him. Can we think of a time in Scripture, and I know there's many, give me an example where someone thought they were doing great, but God humbled them real quick.
David.
David, Harry, tell a story to David real quick, just which one you're talking about, but many times.
Well, we just go collect back when Nathan came and talked to him about, his sin with Bathsheba. He thought he got away with it. I mean, you know, he just, God humbled him. He really humbled him, the fact he lost a child over it. And he realized that he had to change his ways and move on and be king.
You might say you got rid of the evidence.
Yes, that's right.
And then Nathan had to come to him. And Harry?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I call you Joe. You want to talk about Harry?
He spoke to the people, and the people said, "Oh, this must be the voice of God." And he didn't correct him. God, remember, God sent the words to each, and he died right there on the spot.
Any other one that anybody remembers? There's one that really comes to my mind that could apply today very easily.
Seems like Pharaoh had a pride problem.
Pharaoh, he did as well. He did not listen to God, even though God sent many signs and wonders, you know? So that's something to be careful of.
King Nebuchadnezzar.
The Pharisee who prayed was another one. I think that's gonna be, yeah, I'm so much better than this publican over here.
Was it King Nebuchadnezzar that he said that he was so powerful and great, and look what I did, and God turned him into a wild animal?
Right. So, I mean, a lot of examples. The one I was thinking of, what about the rich man that said, I'm going to tear down my buildings and build more to hold all of this stuff that I have done? Did not give God the blessings for that. So do we today, and that's why I say we can probably apply it to our lives today, see things that have been accomplished in our lives and contribute to, I done this? Or do we give God the glory and know that God has blessed us and God is the reason that we're able to do and have what we have? Just think about that and just remember, it's never you doing it, it's God doing it through you. God giving you the ability, God giving you the talents. Archie?
Jacob was a good example of that, giving God thanks for everything.
An example,
Yeah, a good example for the things he got.
right, with all the animals and the blessings he got with, I think everything under him flourished.
Well, he gave a lot to Esau.
Right.
He said, I have plenty, Lord bless me.
Right.
So he gave God glory for that.
I still don't understand that story, but I still don't understand working 7 years and then the 7 more. I don't see how he got tricked on that one.
Yeah, but he stayed longer than that.
I know, what true.
And then Dad-in-law didn't want to take them girls away anyway.
Right, and then he chased him. But yeah, he gave complete credit to God for all the blessings that he had. Definitely. So someone read Romans 12 and verse 3. Romans 12.
For by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned.
So a lot of times how can I put this? Are we responsible sometimes for pumping people up and causing them to feel prideful?
I think we have to watch out for our children, because I think people these days, I'm not gonna say forever, but tend to put their children on pedestals
Right.
and make them think that the world owes them for a living or something. I'm not sure. But I think that we've raised a generation of people that feel that they deserve more than they do.
Right, okay, I agree with that, and I think we can be responsible for sometimes making people feel that they deserve the world bowing down to them.
That was one of the government handouts too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that encourages it.
Yeah, definitely.
Celebrities, they think they can just walk on clouds wherever they go, and they should treat it with respect on earth. Give them the glory for being entertaining.
They're nothing.
You know, I don't watch football anymore, or even sports, for that matter, because I think they put themselves on our pedestal, and then they get paid too much to do it.
They do, they do. They think a lot of themselves. Anyone else? The proverb reminds us again and again that one way or another, we will be humbled. We have two choices. Either we honor ourselves and honor God through it, or sooner or later we will be humbled. A word of caution. It is much more comfortable to humble yourselves than to be humbled. So think about that. Is it better that you get embarrassed, because somebody humbled you? What happens when that happens? What do you think?
We usually don't speak to the person.
Right.
You get resentful.
You get resentful, so it can cause a whole list of other problems, right? Not only are you getting resentful, but because of the way you acted, because of your pride, do you think that other person was resentful to you, had bad feelings towards you? Probably so. So can we cause others to have feelings towards us that we ought not because of how we esteem ourselves? That's something to think about that maybe we haven't thought about.
You make people feel like they're small because you think you're being prideful, and then they're gonna come back, well, I'm gonna show you.
Right.
And it gets to be a tug of war. And over the years, I've seen that happen. That if you want to pass on knowledge, you pass it on with, now this is what I've learned over the years. Can I show you? You don't say, well, this is the way it's done. You know, the way I do it, this is the way it's gonna be done. Well, it's
two different ways.
Two different ways to approach things, but you can make people resentful when you exert your pride and not humble yourself. And just go ahead and they say, well, I'm gonna find out what this really is. I'm gonna show it. You know?
Right.
And then you get this wall built between you.
Right. So it's very important that we act humbly and not prideful, because we can build walls and cause resentment and others to fall away because of how we treat them once we become prideful.
Jesus said too, that if we go to a banquet, don't sit at the head table.
Correct, yeah. And that would be something that would be embarrassing as well. You go up and that's what I always find funny. I mean, when I would go to events and stuff and, there's the CEO or the company there or whatever, I'm not one to go up and just talk. I mean, hi, how you doing? That's about it. But how many people do you see go up and just try to take all their time? And I know that right there is not what they want either, because they want to get out and just say hi to everyone, right? So you got to be careful there, thinking that you're that important that you need to be up there taking all their time or sitting in the seat right beside them. But what did Jesus say, Beverly?
He said, sit down at the back. He said,
Yeah.
they're not moving.
They might move you up, and then therefore you do get a little recognition. Not that that's what you're searching for, but you find out your place and what they're thinking instead of going up and having to move all the way back.
Yeah. Wouldn't be good to be moved back.
No. Definitely not.
This is why the scripture is that first will be last and last will be first.
Right. So there you go.
Start, good leaders in different organizations find out they lead better from the middle at the back instead of being at the front.
Right.
Because they can watch all things and move gently and quietly between groups and move forward. But when you're up front, a lot of times all you're doing is focusing where you're going. You're not focused about who's following.
Right. So, plus you don't see what's going on.
That's right. Yeah. That's the whole thing.
Yeah. So what's funny is, as a little kid, and Kim being a teacher, Tina being a teacher, and some of the others, what's the deal with little kids when you're going somewhere and you line them up?
Me first.
me first. Now,
They're like a bunch of both pack horses.
yeah,
Kids that like pack horses, they got pecking order.
right.
And if you've never messed with a line of pack horses or trail horses, if it's supposed to be at the front of the line, they're gonna fight their way all the way. If he gets at the back, they're gonna fight his way all the way to the
Right.
front. And it's his spot or her spot. And little ones are the same way. I got 3 of them. They don't let us know.
And I've got a theory we can talk about one day on that. But anyhow, so with kids, but do we still want to be first a lot of times?
Yeah.
Like you were just saying, I want to be first. Why are you going to be first? Why do we want to be first when we go to Six Flags, get in the gate, get on the ride? Well, yeah. Now, don't pay attention when we go over here and eat this afternoon. But a lot of reasons why you're going to be first, because you think you're going to be the first one to do it. But as I've grown older, and of course, I wanted to be first when I was little, but are you going to get the same thing?
You're gonna end up with the same thing.
You're going to end up with the same stuff. You're not fighting the crowd. It's like when I travel a lot of times, am I up at the gate the first one to get on the plane? No. Why? Because number one, it's a bunch of people up there trying to fight and get in. Number two, you're not going to get a better, unless you're a Southwest, but you're not going to get a better seat, a better position. You're going to walk in and still get your seat. Plus, it's a lot more comfortable out in the lobby than it is in that seat in the airplane, which you're going to be sitting on for a while.
What I think worse than that is when you depart from the plane, everybody wants to stand up all at one time.
Yeah.
Only so many people get off that plane at one time.
That's right.
And best to say, wait, then you don't have to struggle with you or your carry-on or anything else. You walk out.
Walk right out.
And I found the flight attendants are really, really nice time you get to the end because they're tired of messing with people pushing each other.
Oh, yeah, they definitely are. And the thing is, you can see the people that think they're more important than the others because they try to shove themselves up to the front. I mean, everybody's got a schedule. Everybody's, in the same situation, so.
Terry, we're faith comes around when we humble ourselves and let the people go first. Von and I went to London in '95. Of course, that's the first time I've ever been on an airplane in my life. I got told by the stewardess to go to sleep. And I said, well, plane stutters. I won't know. She said, it's too late, Mr. Jones, so go to sleep. But we got to Gatwick and got off. All these people jumped up the ran. They're going to customs. We just take our time. The real country pumpkins out there, big town, and we took our line. We were at the very back, this big old line. Here comes a guy over to the other customs desk, and he says, "You in the blue shirt, come up here." We went from the back to the front. And that's just taking our time, but we didn't know what we was doing. So
I know, and so, a lot of times, there's benefits, and there are benefits. I've had that happen too. Humility is not a natural instinct in today's world. Our society teaches us to always be strong and never show any sort of weakness. God's ways are different. In this world, if you really want to live, you must seek out everything you can get your hands on, no matter who is destroyed in the process. That's what the world thinks, right? I mean, you run over people. I mean, you go for it. To live in God's world, you must first die. To succeed in this world, you must walk over others to get where you want to go. In God's world, the first step toward success is on your knees. In this world, if you want to become strong, you must pump yourself up. In God's world, if you want to become strong, you must first become weak. This world operates on a different set of rules than does God's world. The Lord can do such great things for us if we are humble, and so very little for us when we are proud. So that's something to think about. We all wish we could say that pride is not normally a problem among Christians, but we know better. We have all seen the destructive nature of pride wreak havoc in the Lord's church. People look down their noses at others because they view something differently, rather than sitting down and trying to come to a common understanding. James tells us that God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Submit therefore to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you. In James chapter 4, 6 through 7, and verse 10. God opposes pride because it is a tool of the devil. With it, he has destroyed countless churches, families, and individuals. Little can be accomplished for God when pride is the motivator. Andrew Murray said, "It is easy to think that we humble ourselves before God, but our humility toward others is only sufficient proof that our humility before God is real." So think about that. You may think you're humble before God, but if you're not humble before your brothers and sisters and others, are you really humble? Because they see that. They see that. In another proverb, Solomon writes, "Before honor becomes humility," in Proverbs 15:33. If we want to live a life that matters, it begins with humility. We will not be teachable until we become humble. Some of the greatest misunderstandings of Scripture come when we put more faith in our ability to interpret the Scriptures than in what the Scriptures say. The ultimate sign of arrogance is when we assume God agrees with us rather than to seek to make sure our beliefs line up with Him. So that's something that's very important there. Are we prideful because we think God's going to align with our beliefs? Or do we think that we need to align with God's beliefs, what God tells us to do? So it's very important that we study.
But if we align with what we believe, then we're so often on the edge and we move further away from God. We get to believe in yourself. We have put God behind us and said we don't need God.
Right.
And whether you move from God, Satan may build you up. It may think you're great and grand, but you're going to be smaller and smaller all the time.
Right. And we can look back like Joe said, Herod. He thought he was it. Nobody could defeat him. Pharaoh, even though had those many plagues and all those signs, still thought he was a god. So.
Well, Saul placed himself as God when he sacrificed before Samuel got there.
Right.
And he was saying, well, I'm going to handle this. We don't have a priest. We're going to handle it.
Right.
And he placed himself in the wrong position.
And did wrong.
Did wrong.
Why is humility a benefit to the Christian life? Solomon tells us that God gives his favor to the humble. Can you think of anything more significant than being favored by God? Man's favor is passing. And Jesus said that man's favor is not only passing, but if it is our ultimate goal, it will be our ultimate reward. So if that's what we want to be recognized by men, that's going to be all you get. Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise, you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. And that can be found in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. The rewards man can give us are limited and fleeting. God's rewards are unlimited and everlasting. So that's something to think about when you are, as Margaret says, when the devil is tempting you to tell others what you're doing and how great you are. That's something to think about. That's your reward right there. So be very careful with that. Why does God take such a strong stand against pride? God opposes pride because it tends to reflect spiritual laziness. James wrote, "Who among you is wise and understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds by gentleness of wisdom." In James 3 and 13. If you are truly wise, you shouldn't have to talk about being wise. Again, if you're truly wise, you shouldn't have to talk about being wise. Wisdom is evidenced by the things we do, not the things we say or draw attention to. To have strength, riches, or wisdom, and to talk about what you have, rather than doing something with it, is spiritual laziness. To put God's feelings in words that we can all understand, talk is cheap. What does God require us to do?
humbly before our God, according to Micah 6:8.
Walk humbly before God, but to do his will, to go out and do what he tells us to do. You know, we could talk about it all day long.
Our life is giving our heart, soul, and mind and strength to all of it, not just part of it, all of it.
And if you do that, are you humble before God? Because why? You're doing his will. You submitted to him. Chuck?
I keep thinking of Solomon, how he started out with the right attitude, asking God for wisdom. But once he got it, and then everybody was coming to him and recognizing that great wisdom, he began to take credit for it himself instead of giving it to God. And that's, I think, was the beginning of his downfall, that gave him his problems later in his kingdom.
Well, that, and yeah, not listening to what God said, taking all the foreign wives.
Right.
It really, yeah.
But just, he trusted too much in himself.
Right. So there again, that's where we've got to be very careful, right?
Even a great man can fall.
Yeah. Anybody can fall if they don't resist the devil and start listening and try to be prideful of who they are and what they become. So, good point. How can we develop a more humble attitude? In John chapter 12, verse 25, Jesus is quoted as saying, "He who loves his life loses it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it to eternal life." Lives that matter begin when we let go of our lives. A.W. Tozer said it well when he said, "In every Christian's heart, there is a cross and a throne. And the Christian is on the throne till he puts himself on the cross. If he refuses the cross, he remains on the throne." Perhaps this is at the bottom of the backsliding and worldliness among believers today. We want to be saved, but insist that Christ do all the dying. The harder we try to hold on to our lives, the less of true life we will experience. Lives that matter begin when God lifts us up, and that can only happen when we humble ourselves before him. So some questions that we're going to talk about. Why is pride counterproductive to a life of significance? Why is pride counterproductive to a life of significance?
Mainly because it's all self-focused.
Okay.
You don't ever think about helping others, and we're always trying to outdo everybody else.
And do others think much of you if you're, so is it easy to reach someone? No. So I think definitely that's a great answer there. You know, is because if you're prideful, it's not going to be productive to you being a benefit to God's kingdom.
Someone will fall.
Would definitely fall, yeah.
I think you're going through life with blinders on, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of significant things in life.
And is it easy to get focused? And when I say focused without, you put blinders on, I know I can do that pretty quickly. So, gotta be careful.
You know, when you get to the point you're so focused that there's not a right or left, you put all your lines back on yourself and to guide you through that straight path that you set your thing. And we have people in this world that way, that's part of their life, and they can't, hard for them to understand. They get focused on one thing, it's hard for them to understand that they got to move back and forth. You got to look both ways. I tell my guys when they clean the shop, they sweep the shop, they sweep right down the middle of the shop. And I said, take those blinders off and look at the whole shop.
Right.
You know, because they're not looking left or right to get the job done. 'Cause going straight ahead is not always getting the job done.
Right. Yes. Okay. In what ways have you personally experienced the destructiveness of pride? So I know that probably no one wants to answer this one, but just think about that. Is there a time in your life when you were really prideful and thought you were doing such a great job, or you was such a valuable person in an organization or in your peer group, and something happened that taught you that you weren't really that important. You know, that you really got humble. So something to think about is, you know, how did you personally experience that? You know, how does humility lead to a more significant life? How does humility lead toward
Paul
more
said to be humble and esteem others better than yourself. So if you put others ahead of your own desires or your own needs, you become the blessing that God wants you to be.
Right.
Instead of just soaking in all of what the world has to give, and we turn around and give it back to the world. So,
And I truly believe when you are blessing others and doing things like that, you know, your life is truly going to be blessed in more than one way. I mean, you know, when God's blessing your life, He doesn't just do it halfway, you know, so make sure that you're blessing others anytime that you have a chance. And sometimes it's hard to do because you're thinking, you know, that, well, I don't know what they're going to do with that. I don't, you know, but sometimes that's not our judgment, you know, but it is hard to bless others sometimes when you think they're not doing the right things. But sometimes they do need help in life. And that right there could help lead them to point the right way.
I think about when Jesus was talking to the Pharisees, verse 12 and verse chapter 23 says, who exalts himself will be humbled, and who humbles himself will be exalted. God will take care of us.
God will.
And you know, we need to go back and think about the rich man and Lazarus. God exalted Lazarus and humbled. Really
Table flipped it.
That's right. And Lazarus was always humble. All he wanted was crumbs. He wasn't asking for a steak all the day. He just wanted the crumbs.
He just wanted a little something.
That's right.
Two verses here, part of it, we mentioned, Gary, but the 1 Peter 5:5-6. You younger men, likewise, be subject to your elders, and all of you clothe yourself in humility toward one another. God opposes the proud, but He opposes the humble. Therefore, humble yourself under the right hand of God, that He may exalt you at the proper time.
Right. Is it hard sometimes to submit to our elders? Is it hard to sometimes submit to your parents, to others? Because why? We think we know it all. We gotta be very careful. You know, God does tell us to humble ourselves to others. And we talked about that. What are some practical steps one can take towards developing a more humble attitude? Number one, you think we can pray? Yes. Pray to God and study the scriptures. I think maybe we need a study on pride. And I know that we've had studies on pride. And think about that, because if you're a person that looks at facts and, you know, what can be caused by something, you know, I think you can see that every time in the Bible, as we said, you know, pride comes before a fall, and you can see all kinds of evidences in that, and think about in your life when you and what happened. So I think it benefits every one of us to think about how do we live our lives humbly and how can we serve others without being prideful and trying to tell others what to do, but let's show others what to do by living our life as we should be living our life.
Like that song, less be,
More
than less than me,
more than
more than me, yeah.
Yeah, less of self, more than me. Definitely, and that's kind of really describes the way a Christian's life should be, because we were selfish,
Right.
and then we should be more where none of self and all of thee.
Yeah,
And that's where we
that's
need.
what I'm trying to say.
That's where we
None
need
of
to
self
be.
and all of this.
Yeah, that's definitely where we need to be. I do appreciate everyone's conversation this morning. I know sometimes When you get to some subjects, you don't want to talk about, especially when it can involve your life, but we always love to talk about others and their lives, but never want to talk about ours. So, thank you for that. I'm gonna go ahead and, I think I've got a little time, we've got about 5 minutes right now. So a lot of you, contributed, and the church as a whole contributed to, Felipe. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit something and show you what Felipe had said. He goes, "Dear Brother Terry, greetings. Yes, indeed, I already found a van and I already have it in our house. However, there was an unforgettable incident that happened when we drove the van on our way home. Its front wheel on the driver's side got off on the Skyway." And you gotta, it's okay, but you gotta understand the interpretations, so it sometimes sounds a little different. But luckily, no one was hurt. The three of us, but a minimal dent on its fender was hit by a dislodged tire. Van is still in excellent form. We collected the nuts, but only 4 were found, and put it back on the studs and drove the van to our house. There are a few things that need replacement, especially its tires and the repair of the damaged part of the vehicle. The van is a 2013 model. It's made by a Nissan car maker, very cold aircon. So they're really happy with air conditioning because they don't have air conditioning. So that was the advantage they have. And it still looks shiny. Thanks God we have this vehicle, and to you there who are generous Christians. So every one of you here, with the church and also some individuals contributed. So he says, "I cannot express in words how grateful I am to all of you there in the congregation, most especially to Terry and Joe, for without you, my wish wouldn't come through. My gratefulness also to the elders and members of the congregation. God bless you, brethren, for your love and concern of our needs, evangelizing God's word, yours in his service, Felipe Polonar." So Felipe is very happy, and I think the congregation is there, and they're very blessed, and they're very thankful. But this is what happened with the tire. Before we left yesterday from the seller's house, we brought the tire repair shop for a rim replacement to mag rims. It was there that a worker did not tighten securely the nuts and the studs. I would have complained, but since we were already far away from the shop, I already informed the shop owner of the incident. We just forgave the man who did it. Only God knows what he was doing. So again, I'm sure they were disappointed that it happened, but God takes care of us. And so here's the van they got, and they're very happy with it. It's going to carry some people around when they go to their meetings, and it's just showing that they had to look at the tire and change the tire out. This morning he sent these to me. He says, "Our worship service in La Paz Beach Church of Christ, Brother Lorenzo Concepcion," and I don't know if that name's correct. "I lead the worship singing, and the other members are participating also." There's just some pictures that you can see there. Our group went to La Paz Beach Church of Christ, who went to San Narciso. So there's where they're using the van, taking it, and going to other churches. Because Felipe not only has one church that he helps there in the mission, but he has 3 or 4 different churches they travel to help and spread the good word about God. So again, from Felipe, thank y'all. Appreciate everyone who contributed. So, any questions? Or
At one time, he was riding a motorcycle back and forth.
I'm not for sure on that.
Did he? Isn't that who?
He may have. Now, I know
It's not
Ghana.
it was Ghana.
Okay.
Now I know Felipe. So Felipe communicates with me and Joe because number one, we do support him a little bit on our own. So he does, provide some updates. So anytime you want to know about the work this church is doing, feel free to ask. And he does send pictures every week of his services in the churches that he goes to. So anytime you want an update, please ask. I'll be glad to do that. Thank you.
Kelly, yes.